Hello, welcome back to the Marni On The Move podcast, Boston Marathon Edition. We teamed up with Westin Hotels and Resorts, Westin Seaport Boston, and Westin Copley Place to bring you this series of 6 conversations from the heart of the city and Marathon Central with Olympic, professional, elite, and recreational runners. First activation I dropped into was the Westin Shakeout Run. In 2023, Westin Hotels and Resorts teamed up with Avid World Marathon Majors to get travelers race ready from start to finish, championing race travelers and their supporters at the iconic series of the 6 most renowned marathons in the world. Throughout the weekend, every brand and run club has a shakeout, athlete talks, activations, and crowds overflow Newbury Street and Boylston Street. Dropped into Tracksmith to check out the scene and have brunch with the team. Walked over to Marathon Sports to the Hoka Fly Lab to pick up my Skyward X new running shoes, and it was packed. The running community really comes together in Boston this weekend from around the globe, and it's magical. Even if you're spectating, the energy is just so incredible. Here comes Sise Lema from Ethiopia. More of the men's pack following behind. Here comes CJ Albertson, another podcast guest, and Zach Panning. Here come the lead women's pack. Here comes Des Linden, another one of our podcast guests, and Jenny Simpson on episode 1 of this series. Watching from Wellesley is beyond inspiring. The Scream Tunnel is an experience you cannot miss if you're in Boston watching this iconic Boston Marathon. This is wave 1 running through. From Wellesley, we jumped in the car and drove along the race course back into the city to head to the finish line. Feeling super inspired after spectating the marathon and filming all day, we went back to our hotel, the Westin Boston Seaport, where I laced up to go for a run in my new Hoka Skyward X shoes. On the run, I thought about my conversation with today's guest, Scott Boylan. He is with Team Octagon Elite, an elite team of athletes, and he's doing Boston again for the 16th time. I asked him what he's excited about, what inspires him about this race, and what he's doing when he's not running and doing marathons. We also talk about training and what's next for him in terms of racing and triathlon. It's a great conversation, and I'm sure you're going to be inspired. Just wrapping up my run here at the Seaport and heading back to the Hyper Ice. We are here today with a Boston marathoner, triathlete, Scott Boylan. Scott, it's so awesome to connect with you in Boston today.
Well, it's great to be here, Marni.
Awesome. So why Boston? Like, what brings you to do this marathon?
Well, my first marathon,
Yeah.
I qualified in South Carolina, in Savannah, and I actually didn't know how I would do, and I ended up getting second in my age group at that time. So I said, I can do this, and it also at the same time qualified me for Boston.
Yeah.
So my first marathon qualified me for Boston. So the next year when it came up, I came here, and now I've done it 16 times here, 18 times qualifying, and I will flat tell you it's the best race in the entire world. And I've done all the big 6, so I've been around the world to do these.
Wow. And this is your favorite of all of the 6?
I wouldn't be back 16 times if it wasn't.
So what do you get? Like, you've done it 16 times. So like, basically you know the course really well. So is there something that you're working on, you know, now that you've done it and you know the course that you're always like striving towards? Is it, yeah?
Since I've done this race, I've strived to do a negative split.
Okay.
And I only did it once.
Okay.
And I did it, and it was my best Boston Marathon.
Okay.
But I'm not apt to do that because, as you probably know, in Ironman, you have a tendency to want to go out fast because you don't know how you're going to finish.
Right.
So I've always learned how to do that.
Yeah.
And one day I'm going to get perfection, and I'm going to get the negative split here.
So you're trying to
Again.
master the now. Have you negative split in another marathon?
No.
Okay. Because I always try to negative split, you know, in anything that I do, and it never happens. I mean, maybe in a 10K, but I always feel like I don't trust the process. You know, I don't believe that if I start out slow that I will be able to get faster. I feel like it's just not going to happen.
That's the big problem here, because when you start, you're going downhill.
Yeah.
And so you're more apt to want to go faster.
Yeah.
And some people, and me being one sometimes, goes out too fast.
Right.
And then you got the hills coming up. And you know, and because of that, you have to learn this course to modify that. Mm-hmm. Now, the best thing to have is the year I did my best year here and did a negative split was a wind at your back. It does help.
Yes. Yeah, they actually say that tailwind is half as hard as the headwind, or half as like, I don't know where I was reading about this because it's been so windy in New York lately, and I was running into like this massive headwind, and I was looking forward to the tailwind, but yeah, it wasn't as exciting as like how challenging the headwind was.
I've had it all. I mean, I've had rain, I've had sleet, I've had not snow, I've had headwinds, I've had backwinds, I've had it all. And then I've had gorgeous days like I think this Monday's going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. Yeah. So it's going to be in the 60s or 70?
It's going to start at around 48.
Okay.
That's what you got to prepare for, and then you'll be in the 60s. So here, the thing to learn is how to get rid of clothes. You know? Okay. Yeah. And it's important to, like, I had my wife the other day go out and buy me some things just to throw away in the transition. Yep. And then you got to modify what you're going to wear the rest of the way, because if you go out too much, you'll be too hot, and then sometimes I've been out here, and because I didn't carry something in a rainstorm, you're too cold. So you just have to kind of figure it out and then learn. And that's the beauty of being here so many times, is that I kind of know that, and I know where I'm going to throw, I know where I'm going to get, I know what's going to happen, so it makes it a lot easier.
I feel like so much about running and triathlon is about the weather and understanding how to navigate the weather. It is not even about like running, cycling, or swimming.
The weather is a key component to how you're going to do. Yeah. You know, I've been here when it's going to hopefully be Monday. Yeah. And I've been here when they told us not to come because it was going to be 95 degrees. Yeah. And I still showed up. And
because you're an Ironman. Of course you're going to show up for a 95-degree weather run.
I'm stupid, and I'm getting
like I said, you're an Ironman.
Right. And so you show up regardless of what it is. But then you have to modify yourself in that behavior. One, a friend of mine who I've run around the world with, and we've run 14 of these together, and is that he at that race, and as a doctor, drank too much water. And when it was all over, we had to put him in the tent, because he had what do they call it? I forgot.
Hyponatriosis or something like that, like when you drink too much water.
Drink too much. So you have to.
I would just put the right word in there, Marni Salup, or just.
I appreciate that.
Show notes.
and because that made a differse, and I've luckily, because of Ironman, you learn how to handle that a little better. Yeah. And
so what? So Boston. This is your 16th time doing this race.
16th time to race it.
And you are with Octagon Elite.
Yes.
So talk to me about Octagon Elite. How you connected with this training group and club, and Trista Francis, who is the owner of the manager. Mm-hmm. Trista Francis is the manager of Octagon Elite. She's been on the podcast before. I mean, Octagon is an incredible group of athletes that are top of the top elite athletes. So how did you connect with them?
Well, Trista and I go way back. Okay. She's a tremendous athlete and a great coach. And she basically was on the Timex team. Back many years ago, roughly the Timex team started around 15 years ago, and I got on the team 12 years ago, and was asked to be on with another great group of individuals. And when the Timex team stopped, they got out of that side, Trista started this. And she called me up and said, Scott, would you consider being on the team at the time? And I know Trista, I know what she's going to do, and I knew it was going to be a great team. and I knew it was going to be a lot of athletes. Now, I happen to be 20 and 25 years older than the next athlete in age. We have one other that's my age, and that's kind of fun to be. When you're the old man on the team, and you're still, showing up on podiums, it kind of likes to make it a lot of fun. So she's made it a lot of fun for us.
So, that's incredible. So when we first started talking, you mentioned you're turning 70 this year.
Yes.
And you started doing marathons in your 50s. So what inspired you to start running? What inspired you to get into marathoning?
That's a great story. I can't go through it all.
Okay,
but,
give me
what happened was
the
that
elevator version.
I'm gonna give you the
okay, tell me.
3 minute.
Okay.
3 minute was I used to do high altitude mountain climbing around the world.
Okay.
And I'm not talking about climbing. I'm talking about ice and snow and high altitude. I then had to stop that because I have 4 kids and we wanted to get insurance, and we couldn't do that anymore. So a friend of mine who was a triathlete said to me, Scott, I think you've got the VO max. You can get out and do this because you're used to going to 23,000, 20,000 feet. You can do it. I said, nah, I've never swam. I run a little bit, but I never. So he bet me on it, and I happened to do my first triathlon was an Xterra race.
Wow.
And I actually did it, and I was swimming in it. My son, who was I think 8 years old, was running beside me in the water. You're not going to drown, Dad. And I made it, and I actually won it. And so I said, well, maybe I can do this.
That's so
but then all of a sudden the next year I said, I want to do an Ironman because I think this is going to be more fun. And they reminded me that I basically had never done a marathon.
Right, which is a totally different sport.
Totally different sport.
In all fairness.
So I said, well, I better go do a marathon. So I decided then to go do a marathon. Before I was going to do, I already said I was going to do the Ironman 4 months later.
Okay.
So I said that I got to go do it. So I did it. I went to Savannah and ran my first marathon. And I enjoyed it so much, had a great time, and I came in second in my age group at the time. So I kind of said, I can do this. And that's when the whole thing started. So then the next year, I qualified for Boston at my first marathon.
Got it.
So,
full circle moment.
So I go there, So then I said, this is kind of nirvana. I get to do the Ironman, so it made it easier because I knew what a marathon was.
Yeah.
And then I go and I start doing Boston, and I've been doing Boston ever since.
And do you have like a favorite of our 3 sports, even though it's one sport? Do you have like a favorite of the 3, cycling, swimming, running? Running.
I'm a runner.
You're a runner. You're not out there doing centuries? Or
no.
You're more doing the marathons?
I'm doing the marathons. I've tried a 50K, and I got bored.
Okay.
And so that was me because I like doing 3 things, right?
Yeah.
And a marathon fit within the 3 things, and so it became fun. Where I did long rides sometimes, I did long runs, and I would do as little swimming as I had to do.
And what do you love about running?
The freedom. I mean, because what happens if you're doing a triathlon and you're an Ironman, you're just worrying about suffering.
Yeah.
And where it's going to hit you, whether it's whether it's on the bike at mile 90 or whether it's at the run on mile 17.
Right.
In marathons, your mind is clear, and people go, have you ever run with earphones? No. Have you ever done anything with anything? No. I said, I run plain. I know what I'm going to eat. I know what I'm going to drink, and I can think about the world. I can think about what's going on and enjoy the people around me.
Right.
Because in a marathon, you actually are enjoying the experience with the others.
Right.
In a triathlon, you're suffering with the others.
Right. I like that analogy. That's a very good analogy. Yeah. I do. I feel like, sometimes when I'm doing a triathlon, like, if there's no one around me, I could be totally lost and have no idea that if I'm even still on the bike course.
Yeah, you're not thinking that much.
Yeah.
You're just thinking about what's ahead, and you're thinking about that you got to transition to the next thing.
Right. You have to survive the bike to get to the run, and then survive the run to get to the finish line.
Correct. I mean, but with this, you're having a fun with a whole bunch of people, and wherever I've done this in the world, it's the same people. I mean, what I mean by that is just happy-go-lucky, out to do something on a nice day. And by the way, have it done in 3.5 hours, 4 hours, and whatever, and then go home. Right?
Yeah.
By that, you're just coming off the bike.
So when you started, were you a lot faster, or Like, are you still the same pace? Like, what's your...
I wish I was.
Okay.
At 70, you learn that it's different than 52.
Don't tell me. I don't want to know.
I just have to say that it does work.
I don't
But the
believe
one
it.
thing is, you only have to be faster than the next fastest in your age.
Right.
So so the difference is you learn that you have to. It's settled that you're not going to be as fast as you once were.
Okay. And do you do strength train and do all kinds of other stuff in between running, or like how do you stay fit?
Well, because I still do triathlons.
Okay,
so I still run, swim, bike, and I do it all in that standpoint. And I do a lot more stretching, a lot more PT work.
Yeah, a lot more PT work. Do you feel like that doing the multiple sports has given you the ability to have that like sort of longevity in your running?
I do. I think that one of the things you always say is that an Ironman is an easier run than it is in a marathon. Believe it or not.
Right.
And that's only because you stay a little bit less aerobic, right? In a marathon, you're going aerobic, you're going out.
You're trying,
But that's what the thrill is, because your body can do it if you put your mind to it and you train for it.
Right. And so are you training for any Ironman now?
I stopped doing it COVID. I stopped doing full Ironman.
Okay.
I did 18. I was Conan 3 times. I had enough, and my wife said she didn't want to go to Hawaii anymore.
Wow, that means Hawaii has jumped the shark.
But what I do now is I do 70.3s.
Yeah.
And why we love them is because if you go to the Worlds, you're going all around the world. I mean, and we've done them all over, and I luckily I can do that and get in that group. So I still do 70.3s.
That's great. I think that's a great distance too, though. It's good for training. It's like manageable. And so now, is your wife also an athlete?
No, she is one of the best supporters in my entire life. She's been in every Ironman. She's met me on the course all along the way, which gets me the energy to keep going on an Ironman. She's been at every marathon I've done, and she's there like today, like tomorrow, Monday actually. She'll be at 17.2.
Okay.
That's where I see her here in Boston, and the reason is that's right before a aid stop. I can get a banana from her and I can get a kiss.
Oh, that's awesome! I love that.
Yeah, and then she was even there for me in 2013 when we were here for the explosion. And I will tell you that was the scariest day in our lives, but the issue is she was there for me, which was nothing better than that.
Oh, you were here for that race? I didn't know that.
I was, yes.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Obviously, were you further back before the explosion happened?
I was already in the hotel room and taking a shower.
Okay.
But the issue,
no,
it's just I was there, and
That's awful.
but my wife was still out there because a friend of ours was in that 4-hour group. And we couldn't get in touch with each other for over an hour, so it was a tough day. But Boston, that's what makes it Boston strong. I was here in 2014, the year afterwards also.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, could be no more proud of how the city recovered.
Yeah. I remember watching that race on television and thinking like, oh my God, I mean, it changed the way we race forever. Like every major marathon, every world major marathon is like, there's so much security now, and it's just, I was like, of course I'm going to keep racing. Like, I'm not going to let that stop me. I mean, that's crazy. Just to be watching that from New York and to have like a lot of friends racing. It was, we didn't know it when we were finished, but when we found out about it, it was nerve-wracking. And, but the thing that was so, and I have to say it, is that I still have in my house the one, I don't ever keep all the different flyers or things, but I do have the one in my house from that year. Yeah.
And then I have the one from the next year because it says Boston Strong.
Boston Strong.
And that feeling, I will go down on Monday and I still feel that.
That's amazing. And now are your kids athletes as well?
No. They learn from their dad. Don't let this take over your life.
That's so funny because you said your son went to college here.
Boston College, yes.
To Boston College.
One of them.
And so he used to come out and cheer for you as well.
Yeah, in the early stages, because he was in college, he's a little older now as I am, and he would meet me at the top of Heartbreak, which everybody, the name is there for a reason, everybody. Heartbreak is a tough hill. And he'd meet me at the top. And all his friends and people that he was with were there with him. Of course, they were drinking and having a great time, but they were there to say, "Dad, go, Dad," and I saw him for 4 years when he was here. And then I always talk about this, that 2 years after, his friends that stayed in graduate school here to be a double eagle, they basically were the same thing for 2 more years.
Amazing.
And I will tell you that stopped many years ago, and I miss it.
And now, when you're not running and training and doing triathlon, like what did you do in your life and your career?
I just retired in April of last year.
Okay.
I was with Morgan Stanley for 45 years. I was in the finance area and management. And so I with one firm, one place my whole life, and then retired, and they gave me the ability to do these things.
It's amazing.
Which is amazing.
It's true. I mean, you work hard and you play hard.
You got to learn how to do that. I mean, I look today and I say, how did I do the Ironman training and still work 12 hours a day?
Yeah.
You make time for things you love.
Yeah.
Including your family and the time.
So what is like the biggest lesson that you've maybe taken from like all the athletics and endurance sports that you've done into your career and just kind of,
Well, the career, was basically the motivator for me to do these things, okay,
right.
Which is interesting because it kept me sharp. I mean, the one thing that it does do, it keeps you on your game.
Right.
You have to learn how to organize your life. You have to organize your family. You have to learn how to organize how you're going to do what training you're going to do that day to that weekend. You have to learn that you got to get up earlier, because if you're going to be at work at 7:30, that means you got to do your training at 5 and 4:30.
Right.
And then you have to train your weekend so that you could be home with the kids. And that's true whether you're doing marathon training or whether you're doing Ironman training or half Ironman training.
Right.
You got to organize yourself to do that and still qualify for your job and do the things you're supposed to do.
That's awesome. Being almost 70, right? Like
You're
still running. You're still, but what is, like, do you have a secret to your success of staying healthy and being able to keep running? For some of my listeners that maybe, are you taking creatine? Are you doing protein? Like, what are you, like vitamin D, omega-3s? Like, are you doing anything like that?
Well, I would clear a drug test. That's not a problem.
Okay. I'm asking for the BAA right now.
Yeah. But the issue is no, what is it? I do it because it makes me feel better. I do it because I want to go to 80, 85.
Yeah.
I do it because, when you're going down and you're running with the running group I run with, and I'm 20 years older, and they're saying, "You're as old as my father. How are you keeping up?" I mean, that's an ego. I mean, you love doing that, and as long as I can do it, I'm going to do it.
Nice. I think we have that in common. I think I'm going to qualify for Kona at 90. And I always say, like, if I do get eaten by a shark at 90, like, I'm cool with that.
It's, I was talking to somebody, if you do this long enough, there's only going to be one of you running.
Right. And then I'll definitely win for my age group.
And you're always going to win.
Yeah.
I've watched the thing of attrition, as I get to 70 and I move up into the 70 range, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And because there's less people than there was when I was 69.
That's so
and I think that's what happens. And so it becomes, there was one of the great guys, and I forget his name now, that did Ironman until he was 84. And one of the things he always said, and it's no different than a marathon in a sense, is that he just said, I'm going to do this as long as I can. And when I can't finish before the 12 o'clock time, I will quit. Well, his last time he made it, but then he decided to stop after that, and he never did it again. And he knew when to stop. And I think your body will tell you that. I truly do. But if I can do this at 85, I'll be thrilled.
I'll see you out there. This is so awesome. Thank you, Scott, so much for dropping in on the podcast.
Well,
you're so inspiring. I can't wait to. Hopefully, I'll still be around when you're running past. When I'll be in the Wellesley area just before the tunnel with my whole video stuff.
I know where you'll be, and I've been there because I love going by Wellesley. And, everybody
That's
does.
Crazy.
You can hear them from a mile out.
I know.
Okay? And,
I know.
That actually keeps you going, and because you hear them and you want to get there.
Yeah.
And it is a thrill. They've done a phenomenal job there through all these years. I mean, it's amazing. It hadn't stopped.
Awesome.
And great podcast, a great thing to do. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Everyone, I immediately emailed Trista, and I was like, do you have anyone racing Boston?
Well, she knows I'm going to be here, because actually our team camp is this weekend in St. George.
Yes.
And I said, I'm going to Boston, and she understood.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you.
Thank you very much.